Hello and welcome back to ParanormalNL Podcast, located in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. That's PNL Podcast for short. I'm your host and founder, JV-Noseworthy. Thank you for tuning in to UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 FM on that Gulf. For tonight's spooky Mother's Day special on UPRN segment number 26, I've got two author guests from Florida and Tennessee tonight waiting backstage who I'll bring on shortly. So grab your favorite beverage and get comfy in your favorite book nook. ParanormalNL Podcast is sponsored by the BOG team, a boots-on-the-ground BOG team doing historical paranormal investigations in Newfoundland, Canada. PNL Podcast believes in supporting international paranormal networking and highlighting global paranormal people, places, and things. If you'd like to be a guest on my show or have a historical or heritage building you'd like investigated in Newfoundland, contact paranormal.nl.podcast@gmail.com and follow PNL Podcast and the BOG team on their Linktree. Now let's get on with the show. Tonight I have on with me all the way from Florida, I've got Mark Elliott Fults, and all the way from Tennessee, Cynn Shrader Hill. Welcome.
Hey!
Just say welcome back to the UPRN people listening. I think I had Mark back on in season 2, episode 112, yes. And Cynn, you were on season 2, episode 61, and season 2, episode 102.
Yay!
Yay!
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, so what's
thank
new?
you.
Who wants to go first? Do you want to introduce yourselves to the folks on UPRN who don't know you? Well, we're pointing it all at each other.
I'm a southerner, women first,
okay, there we go. Ladies first.
I'm Cynn Shrader Hill from Southern Middle Tennessee, Lincoln County, and author. My books are on Amazon, and Elk Valley Paranormal is my baby, my team. And I just love this guy that you have on with us. He is one of my very best friends, and now I'm going to let him speak.
Howdy! Glad to be here from Florida. I'm here from Florida. I'm glad to be here. I hope y'all are doing good.
Mark, tell the UPRN people who don't know who you are, tell them who you are.
I am a southerner who loves to cook, and I like to chase ghosts, and I'm an artist and an author, and
Folks, Mark's
I had a podcast, but I can't get another podcast together.
It's just being funny, y'all.
Yeah, this is what I hear on our conversations every night on the phone.
Yeah, you need a Zoloft to talk to me. You know?
He's our special psychic medium, trance artist, and what do you want me to say? Third degree witch, esoteric spells.
Third degree witch.
All kinds of cool, spooky cookbook stuff. Do you want to talk about your new cookbook?
Yes, she's gonna show it. Now look at this this mofo. It's like an old this mofo is like an old phone book. It is huge.
Tell us the name of it now. Hold it up real close, Cynn.
My mean old grandma's good old cookbook and more. Cause
So
it
that-
only go ahead.
No, that's why I thought this would be a great one for the Mother's Day episode. Your mean old grandma's cookbook.
Oh gosh, and she was such a witch on a stick, and I'm a witch, so that's saying something. They may have misspelled it, you know. But when we started doing this, I have been collecting recipes for 30 years, besides having her grandma's recipes, because nobody wanted her stuff when she died. I'm the only one who, and I got fancy. I saw a flaming peach cake recipe, and I got hooked. And I thought, flaming, I relate. And it's not cannibalism. So, okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, flaming. And so flaming peaches. It sounded great. So I started collecting, and then I've been for 30 years going, I'm going to do a book. I'm going to do a cookbook. I'm going to do one. And then when Cynn and I started working together doing stuff, you know, I was like, I want to do a cookbook. And she was like, sure. And that was the hardest dang book I've ever done. It is so complex.
And we thought it was going to be the easiest thing we've ever done.
It's a big book, right?
It's huge. It's 472 pages, I think.
It didn't.
Go ahead.
It didn't start off that much, though.
No.
Now, when you talk about cookbook, is there more like stuff in it, like metaphysical stuff in there also?
Yeah, because I'm a weirdo, and I like to talk. I talk to dead people, you know, because I was dropped on my head and talked to the dead. And I'm a psychic who was killed 32 years ago, came back from it. And so I do a lot of serious psychic work. And I decided I wanted to do something fun, you know, because you got to be crazy. And so when we started doing this, it had Grandma's recipes, and I got them all together, and I thought the more that I did it, the more kind of fell out. You know, it was like you open the closet and a bone falls out. And before you know it, you got a skeleton. And I started, and I've researched weird recipes for years. Weird stuff. Because Grandma and Grandpa were raised on an old farm in Texas. They were Edwardians. And they ate stuff that most people would throw away or freak out, you know, because if you went to their house, Grandma was the best cook I knew. But she was a great Southern cook because she was trained from the age of 7 on up. You know, at 7, they put her at the counter and she started making biscuits. And then after that, she started cooking. And great cook. Horrible person, great cook. But if you went to their house, you didn't say what's on the stove if you saw something cooking, because they'd tell you, because it would be pig's brains and eggs, it'd be tripe, it would be chitlins, or you know, gizzards, and
my grandma, I think it may have been from the Depression stage. You think they keep everything. My grandmother was the same way. What's this, Cynn? Let me take this off the stage
so we can see. That's the warning in the book.
Before you get to the bad stuff.
Yes, go. Take the picture down a little. Can you take the picture down? It's what happened is I wanted to include the stuff they would eat as comfort food, which was the gross stuff. So then it became the pretty sister recipes and the ugly sister recipes. And the warning is in the back before you get to the ugly sister recipes. And so I said, at first I wasn't going to put the ugly ones in. And then I went, but you know, that's what they ate, you know, that kind of stuff. So we decided, well, we'll do it. So then it was the pretty, if you want to read all the pretty recipes, you just stick with that. If you are too sensitive, you do not look at the back. But if you look at the back, there's some really messed up stuff.
What kind of stuff, Cynn?
Well, let me just read a couple of the titles. We have broiled tripe. We have...
But that's popular down in Texas, though, right, Mark?
Yeah, everywhere now, I think.
Everywhere,
Delicious on toast. It's such a sweet, sweet title. But alas, there's sheep brain, egg, breadcrumbs, lard, and butter toast. So the sheep brain is what put it in this category.
Oh, no. Do you know I used to work in a deli, guys, when I was a kid, and I would have to cut up the brain cheese, and I thought, cheese. But then I thought, brain cheese. And it was like brain, so gross.
Well, they used hog's head cheese kind of stuff. Whoa. Well, and there's some other ones. Let's see.
Well, I mean, there's sailor's eggs. Sailor's eggs use hard-boiled eggs. Bloater's paste.
What's that?
Well, Jen, this is one of the many things I had to look up because I had no clue.
Yeah, like when you said sailor's eggs, to me, I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, bloater's paste is from the fish itself. Mark, tell a little bit about where.
Well, if you, the sailor's eggs, of course, they would catch fish. So, but if you wanted to make this paste, you would take herrings and grind them up and make this paste. And it's really nasty sounding. But if you want to make it gamier, you leave the intestines and everything in and make it that way.
Oh, God.
And so,
well, we've got these fish here in Newfoundland called capelin, and they roll in every season with the whales. And people just smoke the whole thing and just eat the whole thing. You don't even gut them or nothing.
No.
They might like these.
They might. Right? And see, in America, haggis, sheep haggis is illegal.
Is it?
Yeah, in America, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You can't import it from.
No. But I found a recipe for deer haggis, which you make it out of you stuff the heart.
Ooh.
And some people will probably think some of these are like delicacies, and they probably are. Yeah. I mean, tripe is a delicacy in some European places.
I used to have to leave the room now in the break room when people whipped out the tripe soup and stuff. I'd be like, nope, I'll leave it.
I told Mark, interestingly enough, if somebody cooked any of these, I would try it, but not in my kitchen. I don't want to smell it.
Right, yeah.
I'll taste something if somebody else cooks it, but I don't want to cook it and I don't want to smell it.
So what's some of the esoteric spins on the ingredients?
What's that?
What's some of the esoteric spins on some of the ingredients?
Ooh. Well, one of the nicer parts of the book uses violets.
Oh, it's so pretty.
I love, actual violets.
Okay.
And dandelions and things like that. And the violet jelly and the violet.
I've heard lavender too for flowers.
Yes, and candied violets.
There's some Mother's Day recipes right there. Hey, Mark.
Yes. Well, there's a violet brittle candy that you could make in like wood stoves. Okay. You'd have your wood stove going all the time.
Yeah, that was a real popular thing here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Yeah, wood stove.
So you would take a whole bunch of like a pint of violet leaves or of the flowers, and you would take like a couple of pounds of sugar, I think, and you make a syrup, put it in a tray, and let it sit in the oven for 10 days.
10 days?
10 days. And then when it's finished, you break off a piece of it, drain out the syrup in the side of it, and then put it in for 10 more minutes, let it dry out, and then break it up. And it's some kind of like a violet...
Interesting.
Brittle, like peanut brittle.
Okay.
And it's from like 1880, and it sounds gorgeous.
It does.
And I think I'm going to try it in my stove, put it on the lowest heat and let it do for 10 days. But they also like with another violet one, there's a violet Charlotte.
Yes.
Which I'm dying to do.
I'm dying for you.
Charlotte, though, is that, I should know, but I don't.
Well, interesting that you ask, Jen, because he has a whole section of Charlottes. And as soon as I find you that page, he's got the story of frozen Charlotte. And then he's got...
Is that ice cream, Mark?
Well, it's a frozen dessert for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, the frozen Charlotte, in the 1800s, there was a famous poem. There was a story first, and a girl who was, people would travel in their sleds. And this girl was going to a party on Christmas Eve. She wanted everyone to look at her pretty self. She didn't want to cover herself because she was wanting to show her dress. She froze to death in the sled ride on the way to the party.
I can relate to that here in Newfoundland.
Yeah, and they did a poem about it, then a song, then they made desserts called the Frozen Charlottes. Then they did dolls, which were little frozen, little China dolls, all the way from this to 2 feet. And it was huge. And the Frozen Charlotte dessert is, of course, in those days, they did know how to, if they had ice or knew how to freeze anything, you could make Frozen Charlotte. Because if you could freeze things, then you were ahead of the game, because some people, they had ice houses and people could, do it. But the Frozen Charlotte one, it was just when they discovered gelatin.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gelatin's always good, yep.
And they would put these candied violets into the pan, in these layered circular pans, and you'd put the violets in, then the gelatin, so you would have these violet, and you'd put tincture of violet in, which is a beautiful smelling essence. It's like a perfume, but you can eat it. And then also, or paste made out of violets. And so it would be this beautiful gelatin, violet colored dessert based on a dead person. And you would eat it at Easter, which is, because of the, birth and rebirth. And you would eat this frozen dessert based on a dead girl. And you would do that for Easter. But they sound exquisite. There's some
interesting,
beautiful things.
And there's some that use ladyfingers around the edge, and you have icing on them to make them like fences, and then stick the candied violets on them. And it sounds beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to say, whose kitty cat wants to join us? I hear somebody meowing.
Not me.
It was probably mine, but they're not in here right now.
Could be mine in the back room.
We all have cats,
We all do.
I don't have any out here. I can't let mine in here. They would drive me crazy.
I can hear one of ours. I don't know which one of ours is singing in the background. Oh, that sounds delicious.
Frozen Charlotte, thank you.
Yeah. But see, and like she said, you take the little candied violets and put them on there like it's a fence. Then you have the gelatin with the violets in it, and then you would put like whipped cream in the center, and it would be very, very interesting. There's some beautiful things in there, and then there's some gross.
Yeah, but in the Frozen Charlotte, he's got several different kinds. So not just the violet, he's got a rose Charlotte, which uses the where is it? The rose extract, just a little bit of rose extract. So I think that one would be interesting. He's got prune Charlotte, in case you're, needing prunes for any reason. And there's also mock Charlottes. Fake
Charlottes. Yeah.
Fake Charlottes, but so many different kinds: ginger, apricot, apple nut, apple, chocolate Charlotte for children. It just goes on and on. So then it also has a section on funeral food and talks about the sin eater.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, let's switch gears and get spooky.
Yeah.
So there's the funeral foods.
Yes.
Great Mother's Day conversation.
Yeah. Well, the Mother's Day, I am fascinated with funeral foods, because where I come from, funeral food, when back up until the 60s or 70s, they were still, people would bring, it was a big deal to cook dishes and take them to people and you know, make a big deal out of the food. They'd have like a picnic at the funeral home. And, but in the old days, you know, it was if someone died, then you would eat the person to get
What?
their essence.
No.
Yes.
No.
You would get the person. You'd turn them into a paste, put them on crackers, and eat them.
No.
And you would share that with everybody.
That was way back.
That was a way back, maybe 50 years. Anyway, then when we started getting a little bit more evolved, they quit eating the people, but they would have things at the funeral service, to represent that you were going to eat, share the essence of the person. So they would have food, cookies and things like that, corpse cookies and things like that you would take. And then, and in those days there weren't phones, there weren't radios. So some people couldn't make it to the funeral. So you would take corpse cookies and corpse cakes and take them home, and they'd be made out of gingerbread, and you could store them in brown sugar for years.
Okay. Storm and brown sugar.
Then when you get together, like say, there are stories of people keeping pieces of funeral cakes and wedding cakes for 100 years.
Well, we always used to keep the first layer of the wedding cake and then eat it for our anniversary, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We did that with ours.
Yeah. But see, and also people would take the slice of cake, sleep on it, and you would dream about who you were going to marry,
Oh, okay.
But the corpse, they would give food out for people, and then they could share. If somebody came, say like Uncle Bob comes 3 years later and wasn't able to make the funeral, you would get out the elderberry wine, take it out, dip it in the elderberry wine, and drink it. Eat it. Now, if it was for weddings, it would be champagne or wine. But if it was for funerals, it was usually elderberry, because that's what you would sit around and drink with your family, And but then the sin eater was very important for many years. But the last stories I could find of it, like in Scotland, in Ireland, in the 1890s, my grandparents were alive then, so it's not that far back. And what a sin eater would do is you would have a person in town who would be the sin eater. Sometimes it would be a family or just the man. It was usually a man. And what the family would do is to keep their loved one from having to suffer their sins, in the afterlife, they would pay the sin eater to eat the sins of their loved one so they could be clean and go on into heaven. So they would, I found the speech and everything of the sin eater, which I had never heard it. And, but what would happen, because there's a whole, because especially the Victorians made a big ritual of death and stuff like that, But in Victorian houses here, you had, before funeral homes, you would have, if someone died, you'd take them in, put them on the dinner table. The women would come in and clean them. They'd have the service at home. You'd take them to the church and bury them.
Yeah, they did that here back in the day too. They called it, wakes in the house, right? That's what
wakes in the house, and they had a wake because sometimes before embalming, people would wake up.
Oh no!
And so you would have a wake to make sure they weren't going to wake up.
Interesting. I didn't know that's why it's called a wake. I had no idea.
That's just my opinion, but that's what they would do. That's why you would sit with them.
Yeah.
And if you brought them into your house, you wouldn't take them out the door you came in, so that they had a parlor, a taken out door, so that the spirit of the person wouldn't follow you back in the house. And so the people, when they would hire the sin eater, the lady of the house or whoever was chosen would fix food and everything. When they were ready, they'd take the body out the taken out door. They would put the coffin on a like sawhorses in the front of the house. The sin eater would be called. He would come. The woman of the house would put out a spread of food on the body
On the
and
body.
on the body and around the body they would put a linen cloth on the chest and put the food there. I'll tell you, I'll get back to that purpose in a little bit. But they put the
I
cloth
never
on
heard of
it.
that before. Putting
What?
the
Because
food on the body?
well, the food absorbs the sin or the energy of the person. Then the sin eater comes and he does a little salute. When he comes and stands in front of the body, in front of the house, then the woman comes and hands him a coin over the body and a stool underneath, and hands him the power of the spirit. And
Okay.
he takes the money, takes the chair, sits down, eats the food, eats the sin that is absorbed into the food from the body of the person. And then when he's finished, he gets up, does a little prayer, a little thing that says, I have pawned my own soul so that your loved one can enter heaven, cleanly. And then when he gets ready to leave, he has to run because then they'll kick his butt. They'll be throwing things at him, trying to hit him, kick him, because now he's got the sin, and they'll chase him away. And so that was the sin eater. The sin eater would take the sin off of the person. But later, they started making corpse cookies instead of the sin eater. You'd put the cloth on. You'd put the dough of a cookie dough on it, or bread. They would take bread, put it on there because bread rises. And when the dough would rise, it would take in the sin of the person. They'd bake it and give it to the sin eater. And he would drink it with the ale. But later on, they got to where they just made cookies. They would put the cookie dough on there, let it sit there for about 10 minutes or whatever, then take it, bake the cookies, and give the cookies out at the memorial. And then people would take them home and eat them later or share the essence with the people who would come later. Because sometimes people just never got to go to the funerals because, it was the old days. So
I had no idea about that.
And that's the sin eater. But nowadays, instead of eating the sins of the person or eating the person, we started having just food. And everybody would bring food and didn't realize, you're not having to eat the person's sin anymore. But they still brought food. And now people have gotten to where they just order pizza or tacos.
Well, that is still a big tradition here,
Yeah.
to bring food to the funeral home and stuff like that, because a lot of the
yeah.
people are grieving, they don't want to cook, and most of them
They
don't
don't
even want
wanna
to eat.
cook.
But I guess that's just something that you do, right? You bring in
Yeah.
flowers or food or whatever.
Yeah, but if somebody hands you a coin or gives you a cookie, at a funeral, you gotta go, no.
Yeah,
But the sin eater was very important. And but now, of course, we want it to be as separate from it as we can be. And in those days, they didn't want to lose the essence of the person. So that's why they would do it. But to us, it sounds weird. But, to them, it was loving
Everybody
the person.
has their own culture, right?
Yeah. Now, in Russia, I have a picture somewhere where they would take these big dolls, put them by the casket, and do a ceremony to call the spirit of the dead person into the doll. Then you take it home, and if you had a child or if you got pregnant, you would put that spirit into the new child.
Oh.
And there's still some places that do that. It's a transferring of self. But see, you may already have a soul, so that could cause a problem, than putting another soul in. But that's an ancient ritual that comes off of that, to where you can say, like, if Grandpa dies, so one of his granddaughters wants to have him come back in her life, she'll have a baby. She'll put the soul of from him to the doll, then the doll to her child.
That sounds like a voodoo movie or hoodoo movie.
And that's Russian. I mean, they do that kind of stuff in other countries.
Who knew? I didn't know that.
No. So I put some of that stuff in there because funeral foods, were kind of an important thing from where I came from when I was little, and now it's like, whatever. And the frozen Charlottes, the foods based on dead people, like boiled baby pudding.
Oh yeah.
Boiled baby pudding. What is that?
And it's
dead man's leg.
Right. Terrible names.
And those were so popular, and they're like a jelly roll. Dead man's leg is like a jelly roll, and you would take a sleeve off an old shirt and boil it in it, and when you did, it looked like a leg when it was finished. So the boiled baby one is like excuse my language, but it sounds gross, but it's actually not. But spotted dick, which is a pudding with raisins, and it was very popular.
I've heard about it. I just haven't had it before.
And and then the dead
I know where you're going.
The dead boiled baby, it's a pudding that was boiled. They boiled lots and lots of puddings, but it has raisins and things like that. But it's really disturbing. But people used to ask for that. I mean, in restaurants places would supply them. But the dead man's leg was so. I guess for a bakery to do it was a lot of work. So
You're taking me back to the operation room when we did amputations now.
But things like that, that kind of weird stuff. Or my grandmother did great chicken. I mean, great Southern chicken. And every time I try to cook chicken or fried, it looks like crap. And I don't have the knack for frying chicken. But I found one that was, I think, what she used to do, which is you would brown it in butter, then cook it covered, in an iron skillet for an hour in the oven. But there's an old 1800s thing in there for when they would kill chickens, because my grandmother loved to kill anything she could, and eat it. But she liked to kill it. She liked to hurt things. And
it was scary.
She was very scary.
She's terrifying, Jen.
And I mean, I had to be scared my whole life, take my word for it, because, her son, who was my father, was always like, would let me know where he would bury me if he could kill me. And I was like, you're so sweet. But he meant it. He just didn't want to go to jail. But she, I found a Colombian. The Colombians would give the chicken a spoonful of rum before they killed them, because then the chicken wouldn't give a cluck. They said, if he drunk, I didn't care, so, and I'm like, oh my Lord, or how to kill a possum.
Should we give a shout out, Mark, to the Power Hunters and Teal Gray?
And I'll quit talking now. Go ahead, Teal. Get in there. Say something.
We will speak about whatever you'd like.
Well,
there's Cynn. There she is.
There she is. Well,
so, Cynn, let's talk about some of your books. You've got a whole bunch: The Realm of Shadows, Web of Terror. You got 3 more books coming out. I know you've already got. Is it 6? I want to say
I've got 5 out right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm working on 6, 7, and 8. 6 is almost done. It's going to be Death's Doorstep. So near-death experiences, rescues, and spirit warnings. And then the second It's Not Goodbye, More Signs from Beyond. So I've got even more signs from beyond coming out after that. And then a spooky one.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories from either one of your book that you want to share?
Which one would you like to hear? From what kind of?
Well, I always enjoyed the pet ones.
Yeah. I've gotten several that talk about pets coming back. And Joanne, my friend, went over to see her mother. Her mother lived alone. She had a cat, but the cat died. And Joanne was talking with her and saw a cat come in and looked over and then looked at her mom, and her mom said, "Did you see my cat?" And she said, "I did." She said, "Yeah, that's my ghost kitty."
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
amazing how a lot of them come back and check in on us and just kind of show up. And it's really sweet. A couple of people have told me they've actually reached down to pet
Yeah.
something that's rubbed up against them because it felt just like their cat, and their cat had died 6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just, they come back and they're
We had something interesting happen here in our house with my a cat who I didn't even meet in the house that I'm living in now, but apparently it passed downstairs and somebody came over and they were like, "Oh, let me let your cat upstairs." And I thought, upstairs? Because the cats are not allowed downstairs. I have two. But they were like, "Yeah, the black and white kitty." And I was like, "Black and white? I don't have a black and white kitty." But so then my husband showed them a picture and they were like, "Yep, that's the one." He said, "That cat died like years ago and is buried in the backyard."
Oh.
Yeah, and
So
wake
we
up.
even used the SLS and saw it right there. I was like, "Oh, how cute."
That's cool. Well, see, here we've got one that comes around October. We have a Maine Coon kitty.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
so nice. Yeah, big
they're
fluffy ones.
sweet.
Yeah.
I have 4 kitties, but I
Okay.
have a Maine Coon one. And
Yeah.
he's real fluffy and whatever.
You don't
And the
have to
first
keep
time-
them locked outside your room. You can let them in and
No,
it's okay.
no. But they, around the first year we were here, around October, the under the sink, the cabinet in the kitchen would open on its own. And I was like, okay, what's it, and one night I walked in there at like 2 a.m, whatever, and looked over in our utility room where the cats eat and stuff, and I saw this big fluffy tail, and I thought it was Puff Puff, and I went, "Puff, what you doing?" And it fluffed its tail and ran into the wall and disappeared, and I went,
Oh my gosh.
and it wasn't Puff. And then when I would see it, anytime I see it, you'll see its tail and it'll run behind something and kind of disappear, but it comes out from underneath the sink and it seems happy. The cats don't bother. Every so often it'll get on you.
Narnia, because ours
Yeah.
always open the cupboards and we always make fun saying, "Are you going to Narnia looking for stuff?"
Yeah. And every so often, it'll jump on the bed, I'll think it's one of my other ones, and it's nothing, nothing there. So, but a lot of people have a lot of kitty cats and doggy ghosts, so, and they're just fine. I think it's cool.
Yeah,
So,
they're fun stories to talk
They're
about.
sweet. They're sweet.
Yeah.
It's better than having one trying to eat your face off or something,
Yeah.
Cynn, did
Tell
you want
about
to?
your book.
Oh yeah, did you want to talk about your books or Elk Valley or?
Another story about animals. Mostly you hear about cats and dogs, but I had read about chickens and other ghosts that comes back. A friend of mine over in the UK, Natalie, had several animals that check in with her. She's kind of a horse whisperer, so she trains horses and very, very down to earth, very animalist, just can work with all animals. And she's had all different kinds of pets. She's actually had horses that have come back.
Yeah.
Oh wow, horses!
Yeah.
Interesting.
And just different things. So I'm learning a lot getting to write these
Yeah.
stories. They're fun.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. The near-death experience book, it was going to be in the very first science book. I had near-death experiences, but this time I was getting so many near-death experiences. I thought I'd better separate those two books.
Okay.
So that's why there's the near-death one coming out, and then the signs book is going to focus on specifically signs from our loved ones, whether it be cardinals that you see outside, the first person you think of, cologne, a special song that always plays on the radio, a picture that falls out of nowhere, and apparitions, dreams, things like that.
Yeah, people get a lot of those signs, definitely.
Yes.
Butterflies
and dragonflies, and
Interesting.
Yeah, she's got some great books, really.
I put a butterfly up here by Mark. What does that mean? Why did I do that?
I don't know. Love is like a butterfly.
Somebody visiting you from afar.
I don't know. Well, you've got two books you're working on right now. Correct?
Actually three. Actually three, because that third one is going to be more of the dark stories again. So I've got some dark stories coming up, like the last one, Realm of Shadows. It was some of the spookier things, like some of the investigations I've gone on that not demonic, but very uncomfortable for whatever reason, and darker kind of things that had happened. And the EVPs that I got were even darker.
Did you want to talk about some of those, or?
Sure. The very first case I went on, I was with a group called Ghost Hunters of Southern Tennessee out of McMinnville. Okay. And they're actually the ones that trained me to know how to investigate and how to use the equipment, how to go about an investigation, how you set up a case, and, just different things like that. And then a year later, I formed Elk Valley Paranormal because I always wanted my own. But these guys were fantastic in training me. And the very first residential case that I got as case manager was over about an hour and a half from me over in Columbia. And she had a lot of things happening with her, and she was worried about her grandchildren because they lived there. So she had admitted she used Ouija boards, which, if you use them correctly, it's not a problem, just like anything else. If you use them correctly and your intent is where it should be instead of darker, then you shouldn't have a problem. But she was delving into dark magic and using the Ouija board to try to call forth these spirits, and she'd gotten some. So she had told us, no, I've thrown all that stuff away. I no longer practice, and I just want my house safe for my family. It's just me and my husband, my daughter, and my grandchild. Right. And I want us to be able to live in peace because we're having a lot of issues going on. So I called her. She answered all my questions. We get there. I have never in my life seen as many crosses and crucifixes, mirrors, and wind chimes in a house. So many that you couldn't even tell the color of the walls.
Wow.
You couldn't. They were everywhere. And I didn't understand the meaning of the mirrors for a while. Mark actually told me. Mark is my go-to.
Make a mirror face a mirror, right, Mark? You can open portals with that.
You can, but
go ahead.
What I learned from Mark is that bad spirits, the ones that tend to want to scare you more than anything and are darker, want to portray themselves as ugly as possible, so they scare you immediately, yet they don't want to see themselves.
No.
Oh.
It's too much reality. And two, antique mirrors, they would cover them when people would die so that the soul wouldn't get trapped in the mirror.
Right.
Right.
And, but they also, the old mirrors had silver in the back of it.
Okay.
So there
That's
is
right.
silver in it. So, some things just, yeah. But a lot of magicians and witches and metaphysical people use mirrors to deflect negativity. And
Deflect
since
it.
deflect it, get rid of it, get it out of your house, and because they really do not like to see what they look like. And if you could see them, you would understand. It's
So I was always told that they travel through the mirrors, and I've had spirits tell us, like we said, where are you right now in the mirror? Well, which mirror? Like, how are you coming through? And they said the mirrors.
it depends. It depends upon what you want out of the
Ah.
you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
So,
intention.
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
But we were
There's
just
some.
having a chat with it, like, whatever was there.
Yeah. Well, since I mean, spirits and energies can be in them. My cousin has one that has one in it, and it's a beautiful mirror, but she will not have it in her
I got my
house.
sage going.
Yeah, she won't have it in her house because when you're in there, you'll see this guy appear at the back. Well, Cynn had been to the house where he had been from, which is in North Chattanooga, that creepy one with the well.
Yes. Yes.
And when you have it in her room, eventually you'll see this guy appear at the back of like he's at the back of the room, and he's just watching, and he was real creepy. So the house is gone, but his essence is still in the mirror.
Interesting.
And so she's like, hell no, hell no, hell to the no, hell to the no. And I'm like, yeah, they ain't coming to my house. Nope, 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 nope.
Do you think it's just the older mirrors, or do you think it's like...
Well, the older ones, I don't know if it's called silver nitrate or whatever it was that's in
Yeah.
it, but the older ones, the belief of the spirits getting caught in it, and I understand why, because they transfer into it, because if they go with the body's going to rot. Because what a spirit does, it's a sphere of energy. It projects what it thinks it looks like.
Okay.
And so if they're in a mirror, they can project whatever image they want.
Oh.
And so it's a way of staying non-corrupt, because spirits, when I've channeled, I've been in one, there was one called The Grave is Cold and Wet, and I could see through the spirit's eyes from the body being in the grave, and the water was up to here, it was cold, the satin lining had fallen over its face, and it was like, it's cold, it's wet, So they don't want to see what they look like in real time. But if they can project what they remember or what they look like, then it's better. They can project whatever they want. But if they project what they really look like, they're pretty scary because they're decomposing.
Yeah, when you talk to a lot of them, they're like, "Oh, I'm stroking your hair," or "Oh, I miss my hair," and "Oh, my hair fell out," and I don't know how many different ones you talk to would say that. Have you had them say that to y'all?
Yeah. Well, we were at a funeral home. Remember that Ouija board that they were trying to trick me with? She's got a great picture. A great picture. It's an open Ouija board, and you can still see the axon terminal that comes out of it that the spirit is attached to, and you can see the slash of the cord in the picture. And because a lot of people, when they use Ouija boards, they don't close them, and
They
if you
forget
leave
to
it
say
open,
goodbye.
they get scared and
Run
off,
away.
or they just and it just is leaving a door open.
Right.
And so, but mirrors can be that too. They can come out of mirrors, be in mirrors, come through mirrors. They can be kind of a portal. But the antique mirrors seem to be more prone to it. I don't know what they're using nowadays in the mirrors. but it doesn't seem as prevalent. But you can use mirrors to chase negative things out of your house, but you need to use other things with it to get it out, keep it out.
Like we've set up some like trail cams and stuff like that, and seen a lot of orbs come in and out of the mirrors and stuff.
Yeah. And the orb is what it is. It's the third eye.
Yeah.
When you're dead, that's what it is. It's
and if you cover the mirror, then they can't do that, right? They can't go in.
Yeah, they covered the mirrors to keep them from looking at their own reflection, to keep from going into the mirror, because what you're seeing in the mirror, as I'm sitting here, I have a mirror fetish. I have all these mirrors around me. I got this one covered up behind me.
But is it true you're not supposed to have a mirror face a mirror? Is that?
Yeah. Well, you don't have a mirror in a room where someone dies. When they die, you cover it. Or in the house, they would cover them so that the spirit, when it's leaving, won't get distracted and look at itself and then still live in the mirror. Because to them, that's what they remember looking like. Right. And within 30 minutes to a couple of hours, they don't look the same, because once the spirit's out of the body, the eyes sink in, because there's no more pressure of this pushing. So the eyes sink in, the face sinks in, everything, and they start decomposing. So they can live looking like they did, projecting that, they can look like themselves in the mirrors sometimes, for ages, hundreds of years if they know how,
So is that?
And
I think too, what you were saying, Jen, about not facing a mirror to a mirror, if you ever see that, it's really disorienting if you're actually looking into one and seeing one, because it goes on and on forever and ever and ever and ever. So I think maybe too, that disorientation has a little bit to do with what people feel.
In magic and spells, people, to drive people crazy, will take their picture and put them between mirrors, and it will, the energy you send out is being reflected back and back. So it's I forgot, what did they call that? It's not a binding, but it's a spell. I've known someone who did that to drive someone crazy.
Wow.
The person was crazy to begin with, so it didn't make them sing.
But that just made it worse. That
it was an intent to make them crazy.
Yeah, because it kept bouncing back and forth. The other one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
And it's the idea that you're deflecting,
right,
off of it. So
right.
It just depends, It depends
on
the intent.
And back to that story, about the wind chimes. I think she had the wind chimes in there to lighten the vibration.
Yeah. But
but
if they didn't know how to cleanse their house and get
No. And it was so bad that the EVPs I got were just horrendous. I was actually hearing through the spirit box while we were there. And like I said, this was my first case that I booked for them. And I was actually able to hear the spirit box back then. And the woman would say, "Who are you?" And the voice would come back through the spirit box, "You know who we are." And I told her, I said, "They say you know." And she said, "I don't know who this is." And I said, "Well, they just said you're lying." So they were so clear for me to pick up just from there that I knew I had some EVPs when I took them home and downloaded them to the computer.
Yeah.
Then the ones I got were like, "You'll never get rid of us. You summoned us. We're going to eat you. We're going to take you to the dirt with us, blah, 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 blah." And so I got all of these out, and they were horrible ones, and sent them to call James. And as soon as I called him, I said, "James, you're not going to believe these EVPs. They're just kind of scary." He goes, "Well, don't worry about it, because she does not want us to come back." And I said, "What? What?" She already knew that we found out, that it was bad. So, and she had not thrown away her black magic books and everything. She was still practicing.
Well, she was doing it as her attention getting kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, it's people do that. They'll do that, and they'll call you and come and look, and they're afraid you'll get rid of them.
Right?
Okay, I keep hearing a ding. I think
it's
JV. I like it.
She got disconnected. She lost internet, but she's trying to get back on. So
we'll keep talking.
We will, because we have no trouble talking.
We'll talk.
We have no trouble.
Just shut me up. Try and shut me up.
What is I want to know what your favorite recipe out of that book is. Do you have one yet?
Yes.
What is it?
My favorite recipe is the one my mommy would make for me. That was my comfort food because I had a terrible childhood. And the things that would heal the wounds is my mama's homemade soup and my mama's American goulash.
Yeah.
And I actually last week made a huge pot of it and ate it all week.
Did you?
I love it. It's elbow macaroni and hamburger and whole tomatoes and onion and it's great. It's real simple. I love it. That's my favorite.
Well, my favorite, I've got a few.
Yeah.
But one of them is the candied orange pills. I really want to do that. And then
it's actually good.
I bet. And then the baked oranges. You hear of baked apples, baked pears even, but I'd never heard of baked oranges. And I think that sounds so good.
It would be very interesting. And then they also even have baked onions, which are actually sweetens them up and they're good. And I would eat those.
Isn't that the one that uses milk in it?
I'm not sure. There's several.
One of them, it's a strange one. It uses milk in the onion. Hi, Jay.
Oh my gosh, can you believe I lost the internet for like a few seconds? We're having a rainstorm here. Did y'all keep talking?
No.
We did.
No.
We did. We kept going. My
gosh. I was over here freaking out.
No, we've been talking baked oranges and baked onions and goulash. It's funny. No, wait. It's funny.
That's a first for everything, right?
Wow.
You gotta love the internet. Oh man.
Right? No, I went ahead and finished the story about that lady, and then I asked Mark what his favorite recipe was, and I told what mine was. So we've just been jabbering back and forth. You can't shut us up.
Well, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about where people can find you if they're looking to follow you. I know I've got your link trees pulled up there, but do you want to give a shout out to your fans and where they can find you and all your good stuff? I know you've got some stuff coming up soon at the Night House.
Right. A couple of things coming up there. There's a public hunt coming up, and I think this is going to air after, though. So a couple of speaking engagements that hopefully I can sell some books. I've got a couple of investigations lined up, actually going with a couple of friends of mine. So not team. It's not team. I'm going on public investigations on a couple of places I've been wanting to go to.
Mark, do you want to give a shout out to your fans?
Hey, fans!
30 seconds left.
What I'm doing, you can look me up, Mark Elliott Fults, on Facebook, which is the best way because if you send me an email, it will get lost in the 6,000 emails that are sitting there because I've been going so much I haven't had time to go through my emails. And I'm working on, let me see, the Psychic Worm Stitch, which is how I think everything works. Headless Ghost, which is just a bunch of antique ghost stories that I collected that I like. And I'm doing the Chattanooga Chills walking tour book, which Cynn came up with that idea because I used to do a ghost tour in Chattanooga. And
I'm going to leave us with a little bit of music in the background here. Say bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for being on the show. Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Mother's Day.
1.7 FM and 105.3 FM.
I can't do that too much, but